Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you're having or have had a beautiful and blessed day. My sinuses are not getting better, so I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me very well today, but I'm going to do my best. Pray. And when you're praying, pray for our country, because look, y'all, New York is in real trouble. And I live in the rural South. And I hear people say, I don't care. They voted for that idiot. Let them deal with it. Fair enough. But you better care. Because that idiot is in charge of the city that is our economy. So you better care. And you better start praying for New York. What would God have you do? Ignore him? No, he would have you pray for him and try. Look, y'all, New York's in trouble. Real trouble. I don't like quoting the Bible. No, I don't like quoting chapter and verse. I like just saying things I know the Bible says. And to be honest, I've never been someone who really tried to remember things where I could quote verbatim this thing or verbatim that thing. Verbatim, word for word. But I do paraphrase people a lot for things. I'm not going to tell you this is because that right there might set some of you off the wrong way. What I will tell you is someone said once about communism. And it's probably as good an explanation as I've ever heard. This person was asked, how do you tell if someone's a communist? And he said, they read Marx and Lenin. That's okay. How do you tell if someone's anti-communist, against it? He said, they also read Marx and Lenin, but they understand it. If you scream socialism or communism a lot, but you've never actually read the manifesto, go read it. It barely mentions love at all, and when it does, it ain't talking about love. It is a piece of literature calling for the absolute abolition of the nuclear family, of God. It was so bad. Where does Marx end up dying at? Where does he end up living the last years of his life dying at? Go look that up and see why. Because the places that were communist or socialist didn't want him anywhere near them. They were pissed about him. It's like you telling people too much. They didn't want him nowhere near them. He had to go to a capitalist place where he could live freely the way he wanted to, right? Because if he'd taken capitalist ideas over there, he'd have been killed. And his ideas and writings and stuff, they were pissed at him. He had to go somewhere he supposedly hated to live the way he wanted to live, because everywhere else was going to get rid of him. The socialists that he loved so much were going to get rid of him. Pray for New York City, y'all. California as a whole, but there's still hope for California. There's still red swatches. There's still people that haven't lost their minds. There's, but pray for California. Pray for New York. Good God, pray for New York. You ever seen I don't know if I call it what it's called, you'll know it or not, but a fence that zigzags and has wood that does this, right? It zigzags, it comes here, then when this is pointing over here, it goes back like this. Those fences are an example of people putting up a fence in a place where nature didn't want a fence. Where you couldn't really dig post holes in some of those places because it was so rocky. Appalachia, things like that. These are examples of human beings saying, well, there's still a way. If we stack the wood just right and in such a way, it'll just stay there. There are those fences, you can go find some in Appalachia that are 200 and 300 years old. Still sitting there. They made them out of cedar and cypress, things that didn't rot. And they're still standing there. Go put up a brand new chain link fence today and see if it's there in 200 years. Go put up one of those brand new pretty fences with a privacy fence with all the boards and see if it's there in 10 years if you don't really take care of it. Why am I talking about that? Because communism seeks to tear apart and tear down. Socialism tears apart and tears down. What we always have to be doing is trying to build. In places like New York, where there's a lot of very rocky ground right now, that doesn't mean you can't build. It just means you got to adjust the way you build. California, same. So pray for them. Pray that God shows up and shows out for those people so that He can put a leader in there, and that leader can help them. I don't think there's another answer. I wish I could clear all this out, but I cannot. All right. Chapters 15 and 16 of Deuteronomy. At the end of every 7-year period, you shall have a remission of debts. And this is the manner of the remission. Creditors shall remit all claims on loans made to the neighbor, not pressing the neighbor one who is kin, because the Lord's remission has been proclaimed. You may press a foreigner, but you shall remit the claim on what your kin owes to you. However, since the Lord your God will bless you abundantly in the land of the Lord your God, will give you to possess as a heritage, there shall be no one of you in need, if you but listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and carefully observe this entire commandment which I enjoin on you today. Since the Lord your God will bless you as He promised, you will lend to many nations and borrow from none. You will rule over many nations, and none will rule over you. Remember, when we're reading about the nation of Israel, do not think about the place that exists currently. These are not the same thing.
It's a good book.
Sorry, it just fell down off my...
It's a good book. It's a good book.
If you like to read the old crap I like to read, that was written like right after World War II. And that's new for me. That's pretty modern for me. When you give generously and not with a stingy heart, for the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and undertakings. The land will never lack for needy persons. That is why I command you, open your hand freely to your poor, and to your needy, and to your kin in your land. If your kin, a Hebrew man or woman, now see, let's be real clear. He's not saying your brother, your sister, your cousin, Bob. He's saying anybody that is Israelite. He is Hebrew. Listen. If your kin, a Hebrew man or woman, sells himself or herself to you, just a Hebrew, he didn't say nothing about where they stood in this tribe or in that tribe or in this thing or in that. Just that they are Hebrew. One of your own kin. Right? One of your people. Which I would argue today means Christians, period. If they are Christian, period, they're one of your people. Anyway. If he sells himself or herself to you, he or she is to serve for you for 6 years. But in the 7th year you shall release him or her as a free person. They have sold themselves to you in slavery because they owed you that much. But after 6 years, now that's enough. You let them go. When you release a male from your service as a free person, you shall not send him away empty-handed, but you shall weigh him down with gifts from your flock and threshing floor and winepress. As the Lord your God has blessed you, so you shall give to him. For remember that you too were slaves in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I am giving you this command today. But if he says to you, I do not wish to leave you, because he loves you and your household, so he sold himself to slavery to you, but in the last 6 years he has become a part of the family almost. He doesn't want to leave. Now, does that happen if you treat him like crap? No. That's back to God saying, treat everyone like your brother. Treat everyone, slave, alien, whatever. Treat them right. Since he is well off with you, you shall take an awl and put it through his ear, into the door, and he shall be your slave forever. Your female slave also you shall treat in the same way. Do not be reluctant when you let them go free, since the service they have given you for 6 years was worth twice a hired laborer's salary. And the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. You shall consecrate the Lord your God every male, firstling born in your herd and in the flock. You shall not work the firstlings of your cattle, nor shear the firstlings of your flock. In the presence of the Lord your God, he about to tell you to eat them again. Not to give them up, not to eat them. I'm just telling you, that's what he's about to tell you. In the presence of your Lord your God, you shall eat them year after year, you and your household in the place that the Lord will choose. But if a firstling has any defect, lameness or blindness, any such serious defect, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God, but in your own communities you may eat it, the unclean and the clean eating it together, as you would a gazelle or a deer. Only you must not eat of its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. We've talked about that. Chapter 16, observe the month of Abib, by keeping the Passover of the Lord your God, since it was in the month of Abib that the Lord your God brought you out of the land of Egypt by night. You shall offer the Passover sacrifice from your flock and your herd to the Lord your God, in the place of the Lord will choose, as a dwelling place of his name. You shall not eat leavened bread with it. For 7 days you shall eat with it only unleavened bread, the bread of affliction, so that you may remember as long as you live the day you left the land of Egypt. For in hurried flight you left the land of Egypt. Remember, we talked about this. It wasn't about, don't even remember, it was about you're supposed to be in a hurry, which means you don't have time to add yeast and leaven your bread. Grab the freaking bread, you gotta go. No leaven is to be found with you in all your territory for 7 days, and none of the meat which you sacrifice on the evening of the first day shall be kept over for the next day. You may not sacrifice the Passover in any of the communities which the Lord your God gives you, only at the place which the Lord your God will choose as the dwelling place for his name, and in the evening at sunset, at the very time when you left Egypt, shall you sacrifice the Passover. You shall cook and eat it at the place of the Lord your God will choose. Then in the morning you may return to your tents. For 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a solemn assembly for the Lord your God. On that day you shall do no work. You shall count off 7 weeks. Begin to count the 7 weeks from the day when the sickle is first put to the standing grain. You shall then keep the Feast of Weeks for the Lord your God, and the measure of your own voluntary offering, which you will then give, to be in proportion to the blessing of the Lord your God has given you. You shall rejoice in the presence of the Lord your God, together with your son and daughter, your male and female slave, and the Levite within your gates. Boy, he basically just told you all about tithing without ever once saying it was tithing, and without ever once saying it was 10%. What did he say? What did he say? You shall then keep the Feast of Weeks for the Lord your God, and the measure of your own voluntary offering, which you will give, shall be in proportion to the blessing the Lord your God has given you. Together with your son and daughter, your male and female slave, you will rejoice in the presence of the Lord. And the Levite within your gates, as well as the resident alien, the orphan, and the widow among you, in the place which the Lord your God will choose as the dwelling place of his name. Remember that you too were slaves in Egypt, so carry out these statutes carefully. And you shall celebrate the Feast of Booths. Now, we've talked about that before too. Yeah, we don't. The tabernacles, harvested stuff is all brought in. Anyway, for 7 days. When you have gathered in the produce from the threshing floor and the winepress, you shall rejoice at your feast, together with your son and daughter, male and female slave, and also the Levite, the resident alien, the orphan, the widow within your gates. For 7 days you shall celebrate this feast for the Lord your God, in the place which the Lord will choose, since the Lord your God has blessed you in all your crops, and in all your undertakings you will be full of joy. 3 times a year then All your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place that he will choose, at the feast of unleavened bread, at the feast of weeks, and at the feast of booths. They shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed, but each with his own gift, in proportion to the blessing which the Lord your God has given to you. I keep pointing this out, the portion which God has given you, because some people suffer greatly in life, and they are dirt poor. People look at them and they think, it depends on who you are. A good Christian that's really studied this word will say, if it's another good Christian that they're talking about, right, they'll say their suffering in this life is going to guarantee them, right, something, or a lot less suffering. It depends on what you believe, right? If you believe there is a place we all go after our personal judgment, waiting on the judgment, which the Bible tells you there is, because none of us are going to heaven until the judgment, right? But we all get our personal judgment when we die. So where are you? Depends on what you believe. If you believe, as Catholics do, right, that there's a place you go to work off the holes from the nails in the wood that we talked about before, right? To become yourself perfect, because you cannot meet God the Father until you are perfect, and when you die, you're not perfect. You're flawed. And we must be perfect to stand before the Father. If you believe that that is something that happens, then you also read this book and discern, okay, people really suffer in this life. Their time spent in purgatory is going to be quite nice. That's not to say if you've done really well and lived your whole life just on top of the high hog that you're not going to do that too. But our crosses are heavy, and if we're not bearing them eventually someday we have to deal with that. I think, because I don't like teaching out, I'm not a theologian. Theologians teach you a very specific way to look at the Bible. It's not what I do. I try to teach you what the Bible says. I try to teach you what I think it really is telling you. In proportion to the blessing. What I'm telling you is, someone suffering a great deal in this life does not mean they're not sitting right with God. What have they done to be put? Nothing, necessarily. Maybe God just thinks if he pushes them hard enough, they'll be what he needs them to be. But remember when that poor person sitting beside you at church, that's me, I'm the poor person. Believe that. Doesn't put any money in the offering plate that Sunday. It's not because they didn't want to. Because they didn't have it. And that's fine. Yeah. And that's fine. In the communities which the Lord your God has given you, you shall appoint judges and officials throughout your tribes to administer true justice for the people. You must not distort justice. You shall not show partiality. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes even of the wise and twists the words even of the just. Justice alone shall you pursue, so that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not plant an Asherah of any kind of wood next to the altar of the Lord your God, which you will build, nor shall you erect a sacred pillar, such as the Lord your God hates. Remember what an Asherah is? It was just that is a sacred pillar in different belief system. Yeah. All right. I'm not gonna beat this up. We talked too much already. Have a beautiful, blessed day. I love you. I do. Jesus Christ loves you more. If you're like 50-ish and you're thinking I might die alone someday or have to end my life in a hospital or in a nursing home, I'm right there with you. I'm just gonna throw this out there. My kids will be grown and doing their own thing within the next few years. So by the time we're like 65, if you want to just shack up together, living in different bedrooms or whatever, I'm not talking about shack up. I'm talking about shack up. So we just take care of each other and live out our lives, reading the Bible, worshiping God, and eating really well. Hit me up. Y'all have a beautiful, blessed day. I love you.